Agrat bat Mahalat, or Igrat, or Ograf, or Agraf, the chief of witches, or the one who dances upon the rooftops. Do you hear strange sounds upon the roof of your abode in the depths of night, listener? If so, it may just be Agrat or one of our entourage come to pay you a visit. If that is the case, pray that it is because she looks upon you favourably, rather than to bring about your downfall. Here we shall discuss the third of the four queens of Succubi. We have covered the mysterious origins of Lilith, be assured there shall be much more on her in the future. We have gone over the antediluvian depravities of Narmar, and the fallen queen Mahalat. Be aware I shall be delving into topics covering Mahalat here also. Topics not mentioned on the separate video, as it is vital to attaining an understanding of Igrat's motives. Yes, hello, I am the Succubus Scholar, and today we shall be covering the daughter of Mahalat, Agrat. Note that for the rest of the video I shall be using Agrat rather than Agrat. The meaning of her name is debated, with some of the view that it derives from the Persian word angra, meaning demon. Combined with her mother's name as deriving from to dance, the dancing demon is derived. Others see Mahalat as meaning disease, and so various maladies are attributed to her. I, however, am of those who disagree with this. There is nothing to suggest a Persian origin to Agrat, and Mahalat is the name of her mother, and thus describes her mother's proclivities rather than Agrat's. I support the reason given in the Sephemir Philot. And a spirit ruled over it, Igratiel by name, and that spirit was attracted to Mahalat, who was very beautiful, until she conceived from him and bore a daughter, and called her name Agrat, after the name of the spirit. Agrat is generally sidelined to Lilith or Namar. The Emek HaMelech states that of the queens, Agrat ranks below Namar. But this short passage from the Sephemir Philot shows Agrat has a fascinating lineage. Mahalat was one of the daughters of Ishmael, who grew up in the wilderness before marrying the demon who ruled there, and becoming one of the infernal queens for a time. So one would be forgiven for assuming Agrat is a human-demon hybrid. However, this may not be the case. Despite my best efforts, I could find no further information on her father Igratiel, possibly due to being a victim of the war between Lilith and Mahalat, perhaps. But the fact that his name ends with El, a suffix applied to those of angelic origin, for example Michael, Raphael, Uriel, etc., suggests that he was of angelic origin. Note also that the passage refers to him as a spirit rather than a demon. It is likely then that Igratiel is of the fallen host, though which one is debatable. It could be he was part of Lucifer's rebellion, or the lustful Grigori of Narmar's age. It could be he was of the Nephilim, who were wiped out in the deluge and turned into spirits who wander the wastelands, ever thirsting, ever hungering. Either way, Agrat bears the genetic traits of human and angelic origins. That the suffix is not present in her own name, however, makes it quite clear she is no angel herself. As discussed in previous videos, it is generally agreed that there are four queens of the linen, and demons at any time. Since Mahalat's departure from the Quadrarchy, the fourth queen seems to have changed several times. Agrat seems to have managed to cling on to the position beneath the authority of Narmar and Lilith. There is no text stating how one attains this title, but the Tov Haaretz by Nathan Spira states that the king of demons, Samael, rules 4 kingdoms, within each of which he keeps one of these queens. Samael was given 4 kingdoms, and in each of them he has a concubine. The names of his concubines are Lilith, whom he took as his consort, and she is the first one. The second is Namar, the third, Even Maskif, and the fourth, Igraf, the daughter of Mahalat. And the 4 kingdoms are, first, the kingdom of Damascus, in which is found the house of Rimmon. Second, the kingdom of Tyre, which is opposite the land of Israel. Third, the kingdom of Malta, which formerly was called Rhodes. And fourth, the kingdom called Granata, and some say that it is the kingdom of Ishmael. And in each of these 4 kingdoms dwells one of the 4 aforementioned concubines. From this we can discern that for a Lilin, or Succubus, to attain position as one of the 4, they need to gain the favour of Samael, who in turn will elevate them to a position of authority in his domain. Here we can see Agrat is awarded the kingdom of the biblical Ishmael, fitting with Ishmael being her grandfather. That it should be the kingdom of Granata, or Granada, the southern area of Spain, is curious however, as Ishmael is generally considered to have settled within Beersheba. but then this may be due to her mother still ruling the Ionian area at the time. I have seen articles stating that she rules over Salamanca also, further tying her to Spain in the Western Quarter. How did she gain this influence upon Samael? Most likely through her mother, Mahalat. After all, one rarely comes across the name Agrat without it being mentioned that she is Bat Mahalat, or daughter of Mahalat. As if the name carries significant prominence, which by all accounts it did in the infernal world at that time. Various excerpts listed Mahalat along with her daughter Agrat as one of the 4 queens for a short period. All the 4 queens of the demons, Lilith, Agrat, Mahalat and Naamah, and all their cohorts, give birth to children, except Lilith alone, who does not bear, but is just a fornication in the world. We have a tradition that 4 women became the mothers of demons. They were Lilith, Naamah, Agrat and Mahalat. As mentioned in the video on Mahalat, she would gain enough influence and power to hold her own when war broke out between herself and Lilith. What I did not mention in that video, however, is the reason for this war, which is stated within the Sheni Lukot Haberit by Horowitz. There are 2 kinds of harlots. One is the above-mentioned Lilith, who is always associated with wailings, and is the power in charge of melancholy. The other is Mahalat, who is in charge of the superficial kind of happiness, dancing, music, and generally light-hearted irresponsible conduct, inspired by the forces of impurity. The text goes on to express how the 2 factions are at odds and war with one another during the time of Yom Kippur. Lilith views and rules the kingdoms with a melancholy stance, while Mahalat rules with a philosophy of embracing the now and indulging in all things. Before I continue, I would offer my insight as to this difference, as you, listener, would be forgiven for thinking, how is Lilith so predominant? Mahalat's way of harlotry seems far more preferable, even if it is superficial. I think a better explanation of the difference between the 2 is that Lilith struggles to accomplish a long-term game, having her daughter fornicate, bring maladies, and more in an effort to bring about a new age for her children, as revealed in the various texts mentioned in the previous videos. In the Tales of Solomon, it is revealed that demons have the ability of prophecy. No doubt Lilith has foreseen an age that she is striving for, despite the hard path she must walk to accomplish it. Mahalat has no such grand designs. It is said her name means to dance, and so she dances and makes merry. She is short-term, satiating her lusts and desires at the sacrifice of the future. Whilst not sustainable, this attitude is alluring and infectious, and is no doubt how she brought so many to her side. With such power and stance on life, it is only natural that Lilith saw her as a threat to her grand design. So during the age where Lilith and her favoured daughter Naamah, along with Mahalat and her daughter Agrat, reigned as queens, tensions were high between the factions, with civil war predominant amongst the Lilin. However, this same text would reveal that a greater threat would arise that would have the 2 warring queens agree to a temporary truce. A new power arose that forced them to work together, lest all of their kind become enslaved to the mortal world. Solomon's reign, after the attainment of the ring from on high, is given as a golden age of a united Israel, where the way of Yahweh was predominant and all demons were subject to the wise and wealthy ruler of that time. Of course, to the Lilin, it must be regarded as a dark time of slavery and subjugation, of which even the 4 queens would fall victim. Only Naamah's son, Asmodeus, would gain the upper hand for a brief period, usurping Solomon before the king would reclaim his throne and send the demon fleeing. The Shene Lukot Haberit states that both Lilith and Mahalat would submit to King Solomon. The Lord had given Solomon wisdom, as he had promised him. There was peace between Kiram and Solomon, and the 2 of them made a treaty. When the 2 women, Lilith and Mahalat, heard this, they also submitted to Solomon and even prostrated themselves before him. King Solomon would bind the demons with his holy ring and have them labour at the construction of the temple. The Lilin, however, are not really suited for such tasks, and, as stated in the Targum Sheni Esther, he would have them dance and entertain him, as I am sure only succubi can. The Queen of Sheba, often seen as a daughter of Lilith or Lilith herself, would be forced to travel for years to pay obeisance at his court. It is generally believed that Lilith was brought forth under the name of Obizuf, however, and would suffer a far worse indignity. But I shall cover this in another video on Lilith's labours. Igrat's fate during this time comes from a text taken from Patai's work, Hebrew Goddess, quoting the school of Rabbi Shlomo ben Abraham, that brings up a conflict as to the lineage of Asmodeus. Then came 2 harlots to King Solomon, and they were Lilith and Igrath. Lilith, who strangles the children because she cannot set up for herself. From one of them, a screen to be a hiding place for her, and the other is Igrath. One night, David was asleep in the camp in the desert, and in his dream Igrath coupled with him and bore Hadad, identical with Hadad the Edomite. And when they asked him, "What is your name?" he answered, "My name is Ad, Ad is my name." And they called him Ashmedai. He is Ashmedai, the king of demons, who deprived Solomon of his kingdom. This shows Agrat was amongst those brought before Solomon and made to prostrate before him and serve. However, it is revealed here that she copulated before with his father, King David, and it is this that brought forth Ashmedai, or Asmodeus, rather than Narmar during the antediluvian age. Again, if you wish more advice, I believe Asmodeus to be related to Narmar, and that this was simply a link given to Hadad to demonise him, as the Edomite would reclaim his kingdom and be amongst those to contribute to the downfall of the kingdom Solomon had brought about. Nonetheless, this is a fascinating excerpt that shows Agrat was around during this age, perhaps trapped in the richly sealed vessels Solomon kept them in until Solomon was corrupted to worship false idols, with the temple eventually being destroyed and the bound spirits finally freed. After all, I have seen articles claiming she was sealed in a vessel by Solomon and set in the caves of the Dead Sea, then found by King David, with whom she would then copulate with as a reward. If this is true, it must be during the time when King David struggled to get warm. They searched and found the beautiful Abishag to lie with him and aid in this as his concubine. It could be that this is an effort to identify Abishag with the demoness, since she was indirectly entailed in Solomon putting his brother to death, since he requested to marry her, and brought the first sin that caused his corruption. This text, whilst confusing and brief, gives a sense of Agrat enslaved by Solomon, but scheming to bring about his downfall and free her king through her skills in harlotry. If she did indeed conceive Hadad, or had influence on or was Abishag herself, then this almost certainly is the case. Again, we will not go into details here, but Solomon would leave this world and his kingdom would decline, the golden age coming to an end. The temple would be destroyed and the demons freed. With this mutual enemy defeated, Lilith and Mahalat's war would start anew. But where would Agrat stand in this war? One would think she would surely stand with her mother. Perhaps not. As I mentioned in my video on Mahalat, it is my belief that Mahalat has since lost the war. The evidence being overwhelming. Lilith is the one renowned today, with few knowing of Mahalat, and text dating the 4 queens will tellingly be missing her, with a variety of other names appearing in her stead. This has all the signs of a damnatio memoriae, of a victorious nation attempted to wipe out all trace of their enemy from history. As to Mahalat and Agrat's fate, the Sephemir Philot explains. And thereafter Mahalat became the wife of Esau, and she left the desert. Not so her daughter Agrat, for she and Naamah and Lilith and Nagar rule over the 4 Tekophots. And they said that Lilith fornicates with all men, and Naamah only with the Gentiles, and Nagar only with Israel. And Agrat is sent out to do harm on the nights preceding the Sabbaths and Wednesdays. And behold, Lilith is a scant measure that is abomination, which Agrat and Naamah carried to the land of Shinar, as Zechariah said. And about this it is said to the fearers of God, neither shall any plague come nigh thy tent. This suggests to me that Mahalat was exiled back to the mortal realm, forced to take refuge with her father Ishmael before marrying Esau. What is curious, however, is that Agrat would remain, and retain her title, and would seemingly bear no punishment. It could well be that Mahalat negotiated a favourable surrender for her daughter, but note the previous text quoted pertaining to her. The 2 harlots appearing to Solomon were Agrat with Lilith, not her mother. The Sephemir Philot also just stated that Agrat works with Naamah to bring Lilith's scant measure, her influence, across the land. It could be that Agrat has accepted Lilith's dominance and works to her ends, but it also gives a hint of an image of a rebellious daughter wanting something more from life than her mother's shallow indulgences, and finding greater purpose in Lilith's ideals, perhaps causing her to side against her mother and shift the delicate balance of power between the 4 queens. Something also telling is that the Yalkut Hadash also claims that she commands 478 legions and Lilith 480. The exact number her mother used to command, as stated in the Pardes Rumonim, derived from the numerical value of Mahalat. Clearly, Agrat has inherited what her mother had left behind. This is very much supposition, of course, and I shall leave it to you to decide Agrat's motives. Or you can ask her yourself if you're daring enough, for there is a love spell, taken from Ty's work quoting from the Tarvits, that enables you to force Agrat to instill desire in a maiden via the exertion of angelic names. I adjure you, Ograf Mahalaf, Queen of the Demons, with the great, strong and terrible name, with the name of his holy angels, and with the name of Bilar, the heroic King of the Demons, that you sent me X, daughter of Y, the beautiful maiden from among your maidens who follow you, whose number is like the number of days of the year, and with the name of Metatron and Sandalphon, and this must be done either on the eve of Sunday or on the eve of Wednesday, and one must have a separate room, and a clean white bed and clothes, and the room and the bed should be fumigated with aloe wood, and the knowledgeable will understand. A word of advice from one who has dealings with the Lilin. Do not use them for love spells. The Lilin are embodiments of lust, not love, and as such it rarely ends well for those who seek to use them to bring forth such emotions. Their understanding of love is very different to our own. The Clephotic culture is a far cry from what we are accustomed to. So Agrat continues on as one of the queens, seeking to bring forth Lilith's vision and extend her dominion. But notice that Agrat can only bring harm on nights before the Sabbath and Wednesdays. This is similarly stated in the Pesukim as taken from Sephira.org. With regard to the instruction, do not go out alone at night, the Gemara states that this is as it was taught in a Baraita. One should not go out alone at night, neither on Tuesday nights nor on Sabbath nights, because the demon Agrat, daughter of Mahalat, she and her 180,000 angels of destruction go out at these times. And as each and every one of them has permission to destroy by itself, they are all the more dangerous when they go forth together. So the choice to go out these nights is not out of Agrat's personal preference. It's just as Lilith's power would be suppressed by the three angels or the prophet Elijah, Agrat's power would be drastically weakened by the Rabbi Haban ben Dosa and Rabbi Abai. The Gemara states, initially these demons were present every day. Once Agrat, daughter of Mahalat, met Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa and said to him, "Had they not announced about you in the heavens, 'Be careful of Hanina and his Torah,' I would have placed you in danger." He said to her, "If I am considered important in heaven, I decree upon you that you should never travel through inhabited places." She said to him, "I beg you, leave me a little space." He left for her Sabbath nights and Tuesday nights. And furthermore, once Agrat, daughter of Mahalat, met Abai and said to him, "Had they not announced about you in the heavens, 'Be careful of Naamani, Abai and his Torah,' I would have placed you in danger." He said to her, "If I am considered important in heaven, I decree upon you that you should never pass through inhabited places." The Gemara asks, but we see that, notwithstanding these anecdotes, demons do pass through inhabited areas. The sages say, in explanation, these demons are found on the paths near the city, as horses belonging to the demons flee along those paths, and the demons come to lead them away. Generally, however, demons do not enter inhabited places. So the rabbis limited her enormous host to 2 nights a week, and then only within cities and villages, meaning the traveller in the wild is still at risk any time of the week. I have been unable to find a translation of the supposed passage myself, but several articles state the Yalkut Hadash gives a fascinating description of when she and her host enters inhabited places. She and her followers dance upon the rooftops seeking victims. It is said she travels to and fro upon a chariot, and that drinking blessed water from a white vessel will grant you protection from her assaults. Wednesday and of the Sabbath, for then Agrat bat Mahalat, the dancing roof demon, haunts the air with her train of 18 myriads of messengers of destruction, every one of whom has the power of doing harm. On those nights one should not drink water except out of white vessels, and after having recited the Psalms, or other magic formulas. But Agrat does not offer purely destruction and ruination to the mortal world. Just as Nama is regarded as the mother of divination, so Agrat is named the mistress of sorceresses, and has much wisdom she can impart to those she looks favourably upon. One of which was in fact a rabbi himself. The famed Babylonian rabbi Amemar supposedly had favour both with his god and the mistress of sorceresses, as translated in the Jewish dictionary, or chief of witches as translated by Rabbi Steinsaltz as taken from Sephira.org. The Pesukim 110 gives an unusual debate as to how one should not drink an even quantity of cups of wine before going out, as this will attract demons. Demons, such as King Ashmedai himself, to wreak harm upon them. In the event one does do this, a couple of remedies are offered, one being from Amemar as follows. Amemar said, "The chief of witches said to me, one who encounters witches should say this incantation. Hot feces in torn date baskets in your mouth, witches. May your hairs fall out because you use them for witchcraft. Your crumbs, which you use for witchcraft, should scatter in the wind. Your spices, which you use for your witchcraft, should scatter. The wind should carry away the fresh saffron that you witches hold to perform your witchcraft. As long as I was shown favour from heaven, and you showed me favour, I did not come here. Now that I have come here, your favour towards me has cooled, and you should find favour." This reveals not only a defensive incantation, it also reveals that the rabbi had connection and insight with the witches who supposedly worked with these demons, which some identify as being none other than Agrat herself. As you may have noticed by now, listener, researching Agrat's exploits is almost as frustrating as researching the fourth queen, Mediator Fellow, for other than clearly stating she is one of the four queens and is related to Mahalat, there are no clear statements as to her influence upon the mortal plane. Did she sleep with King David? By all accounts he had trouble copulating in his later years, and the son born of the union conflicts with the many accounts of Asmodeus' antediluvian origin. Unless it is to say different Asmodeus, and Agrat had some tie with the Edomites, to be so linked with Hadad. Did she impart wisdom to Amemar? The Pesukim itself only gives the title, Chief of Witches. Here there is no mention of a demon queen or Agrat herself guiding him. Did she stay out of the war between Lilith and her mother? Did she take a side? Again, frustratingly, there is little material evidence to go by in this respect. More modern works and practitioners have worked with her in an effort to gain a broad understanding of this little-known ruler. Generally regarded as the youngest of the four, many note her as an expert in magical arts, if not a leader amongst witches, and affiliate her with snakes and gorgon-like figures. Unsurprising, as her mother also bears this trait, likely from her rule over Ionia. Other groups, such as the Temple of Ascending Flame, identify her as an initiatrix for travelling between Nahama and Gamaliel on the Glyphotic Tree. Michael W. Ford identifies her in his Luciferian Tarot as the Medusa-like being in her chariot, drawn by an ox and an ass. She is still identified as one of the four queens to this day. However, the title of Queen seems to have been replaced more by Angel of Prostitution in its commonality these days. Many, such as Donald Tyson, see Agrat as a manifestation of Lilith herself, like Namar and the others. As influential as Liber Lilith has been on me, I do not buy the popular "all goddesses are one goddess," in that we are just seeing different aspects of her. If you wish to work with Agrat, she is her own being with her own personality and motivations. For all the lack of clarity, the ancient scriptures do make one thing clear, however. Whatever her stance on the war in the past, she works with Lilith and Namar now to bring forth more of their kind into the world and extend Lilith's sphere of influence. She commands a mighty host, likely inherited from her mother, and rides out on certain nights to bring calamity upon the descendants of Adam and Eve. Keep yourself safe on Wednesdays and Fridays, listener, lest you gain the eye of her or her subjects. Unless, of course, you aspire to attain arcane secrets and mystical knowledge, in which case you would do well to seek her tutelage. But just as in reality, nothing is free in the realm of the spirits, so what price are you willing to pay in turn? Thank you for listening, and I hope this has helped you gain a better understanding of Agrat bat Mahalat. Many articles on this Succubus Queen barely extends to more than a few sentences, a paragraph if you are lucky, so I wanted to try and offer something a bit more extensive. With this video we have but one more queen to cover, the most challenging one, which will likely have to rely on many more modern sources. But until then, listener, may Lilith grant you pleasant dreams.